Hey guys, tonight we're going to dim the lights and journey back thousands of years to a time when ancient peoples shaped the very landscape to honor their dead. We're talking about the towering, mysterious Celtic burial mounds, those silent green hills that dot the landscapes of Ireland, Britain, and parts of mainland Europe on this point. These aren't just bumps in the ground, they are colossal feats of engineering and devotion. Vast earthen tombs that have held their secrets for millennia. Imagine standing on a windswept plain, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and purple, and seeing one of these massive verdant domes silhouetted against the sky. It feels ancient, timeless, and utterly pregnant with untold stories. You can almost hear the whispers of the wind carrying forgotten rituals, the heavy thud of earth being moved by countless hands, and the quiet dignity of a people preparing their loved ones for an eternal journey. These mounds weren't just for burying bodies, they were cosmic calendars, sacred spaces, and profound statements of power and belief. We're going to explore what these enigmatic structures concealed, not just in terms of gold and artifacts, but in terms of the Celtic worldview itself. You probably wouldn't survive a single day helping to construct one of these, let alone navigating its inner passages in the pitch black. Surrounded by the silent dead, you'd be utterly exhausted, covered in mud, and probably more than a little creeped out by the sheer scale of the undertaking. This was a labor of monumental faith and communal effort. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps this little corner of the internet grow, and it lets me know these sleepy historical deep dives are finding their audience. And if you're feeling up to it, drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing before a vast, rounded hill, seemingly natural, yet possessing an uncanny symmetry. The grass covering it is impossibly green, almost glowing under the faint moonlight. This is no ordinary hill. This is an ancient Celtic burial mound, a monumental testament to a people's profound relationship with death, the afterlife, and the very earth beneath their feet. Its sheer size is the first thing that strikes you, dwarfing any single human, and suggesting a collective effort on a scale that beggars belief. These aren't just simple graves, they are intricately designed, meticulously constructed, and often strategically placed features of the landscape, meant to endure for eternity. The term Celtic itself can be a bit broad, encompassing various Iron Age cultures across Europe from roughly 800 BCE to 100 CE, but a common thread among them, particularly for their elite, was the practice of mound burial, a tradition that actually predates the Celts in many regions but was adopted and elaborated upon by them. These mounds, also known as tumuli or barrows, take on diverse structures. Some are simple, rounded domes of earth, covering a central burial chamber. Others are elongated, like giant loaves of bread, perhaps marking multiple interments or family lineages. And then there are the truly awe-inspiring examples, like the passage tombs of the Neolithic period which the Celts would later inhabit and revere, with their complex internal passages leading to central chambers. Sometimes aligned with the solstices or equinoxes, imagine approaching one of these colossal earthen structures. The very act feels like stepping back in time, stripping away the layers of modern life. The air is still, perhaps carrying the scent of damp earth and ancient stone. You might notice subtle features: a ditch encircling the base, perhaps, or remnants of a stone curb, once neatly defining the boundary of the sacred space. These weren't haphazard piles of dirt. They were carefully engineered constructions, designed to protect their contents and to make a lasting statement on the landscape. The precision involved in creating such massive, enduring forms, using only rudimentary tools and immense human labor, is truly staggering. What's concealed within these mounds is as varied as their external forms. The most common type of burial found within Celtic mounds is inhumation, where the body is laid to rest, often in a fetal position. Sometimes extended, however. Cremation was also practiced, particularly in later periods or specific regions, with the cremated remains placed in urns or directly into the earth. This diversity in burial practices within similar mound structures tells us that Celtic beliefs were not monolithic across all their territories or throughout the entire Iron Age. Different tribes, different eras, different social standings, all led to variations in how the final journey was prepared. These mounds served multiple purposes beyond just interring the dead. They were territorial markers, staking a claim on the landscape and signifying the presence and power of a particular tribe or lineage. A prominent mound, visible from miles around, served as a perpetual monument to the ancestors, a silent declaration of ownership and heritage. You wouldn't just stumble upon one, you would have known it was there. A landmark laden with historical and spiritual significance. They also functioned as sacred sites, places where the living could commune with the ancestors, where rituals could be performed, and where the veil between worlds felt thinner. The very act of building such a large structure would have been a profoundly spiritual and communal endeavor, solidifying tribal bonds and reinforcing shared beliefs about the afterlife. It was a physical manifestation of their spiritual world, deeply embedded in their understanding of the cosmos. Archaeologists still debate the extent to which early Celtic peoples distinguished between ancestral reverence and active worship of the dead within these mounds, while clearly honoring their forebears. The line between ancestor veneration and a more generalized cult of the dead is a nuanced area of academic discussion, suggesting a complex interplay of practices and beliefs. As you consider the sheer effort involved, think about the labor. Thousands of cubic meters of earth, stone, and sometimes timber had to be moved, shaped, and carefully placed, all without the aid of modern machinery. This implies a highly organized society, capable of mobilizing a large workforce for long periods. Perhaps during specific times of the year when agricultural work was less demanding. It speaks to a powerful leadership structure and a strong communal will. Driven by deep spiritual conviction, you wouldn't put this much effort into something if it wasn't utterly central to your worldview. The internal structure of these mounds is often surprisingly complex. You might find a central burial chamber, constructed of massive stone slabs megaliths, forming a robust vault. Sometimes, these chambers are accessed by a long, narrow passage, leading you deep into the heart of the mound, hence the term passage tomb. These passages were often aligned with astronomical events, like the winter solstice sunrise, allowing a shaft of light to penetrate the darkness only once a year, illuminating the central chamber and briefly connecting the dead with the cosmic rhythm of rebirth. It's an incredibly sophisticated understanding of astronomy and engineering, woven into the very architecture of death. Beyond the main burial, many mounds contain secondary burials, smaller interments made at later dates, perhaps for family members or important individuals of subsequent generations. This indicates that the mounds weren't just a one-off project, but living, evolving monuments, continually added to and revered over centuries. The ground itself became a multi-generational archive of death and remembrance. You can almost feel the layers of time as you imagine tracing your hand over ancient stones, each one placed by hands that shaped history. The very choice of location for these mounds was rarely accidental. They were often built on prominent hilltops, commanding views of the surrounding landscape, or near sacred natural features like rivers or ancient forests. This strategic placement reinforced their role as landmarks, gathering places, and points of spiritual power. They were not just isolated tombs, but integrated parts of a living, spiritual landscape, connecting the visible world with the unseen realm of the ancestors. One subtle yet intriguing detail about these mounds is the internal layering. Archaeologists often find distinct layers of earth, turf, and sometimes even clay or charcoal, carefully laid down during construction. These layers weren't just for stability, they may have had symbolic meaning, perhaps representing the different strata of the cosmos, or simply marking phases of construction with specific rituals performed at each stage. It adds another layer of complexity to these seemingly simple earthen structures, hinting at a meticulous planning and spiritual purpose far beyond mere interment. As you gaze at these mounds, whether in person or in your mind's eye, they speak of a people deeply connected to their land, their ancestors, and the cyclical nature of life and death. They are silent sentinels, holding secrets of a vanished world, inviting us to ponder the enduring human fascination with what lies beyond the veil. You've stood before the imposing presence of a Celtic burial mound, sensing its ancient power and monumental scale. Now, let's consider what truly gave these structures their profound meaning, the intricate rituals of passage and the deeply held beliefs surrounding Celtic death and the journey into the afterlife. This wasn't just about putting a body in the ground, it was a complex, multi-layered spiritual process designed to ensure the deceased's peaceful transition and to maintain harmony between the living and the dead. Imagine a community in the Iron Age, their lives deeply entwined with the cycles of nature, where the distinction between the physical and spiritual realms was far more fluid than in our modern world. When death occurred, it was not merely an ending, but a significant transition, a journey. The Celts, like many ancient peoples, likely believed in an otherworld, a realm inhabited by deities, spirits, and ancestors, often envisioned as being just beyond the veil of this reality. Sometimes accessed through liminal spaces like deep caves, sacred groves, or indeed, the very mounds they constructed. The funerary rituals would have begun almost immediately after death, imbued with a solemnity that would have permeated the entire community. You might imagine the body being carefully prepared, perhaps washed and adorned in fine clothing, even jewelry, reflecting their status in life. This wasn't just about cleanliness, it was about presenting the deceased respectfully for their journey, ensuring they were properly equipped for the next stage of existence. One of the most striking aspects of Celtic burial practices was the inclusion of grave goods. These weren't mere trinkets. They were carefully selected objects believed to be essential for the deceased in the afterlife, or symbols of their identity and status in this life. You might find weapons, swords, spears, shields, buried with warriors, symbolizing their prowess and continued role even beyond death. Or perhaps personal adornments, intricate brooches, torques neck rings, bracelets indicating wealth and social standing. Even mundane items like pottery, tools, or food offerings have been found, suggesting a belief in the continuation of daily needs in the otherworld. This practice underscores a fundamental belief that the afterlife was not an ethereal, disembodied existence, but one that mirrored, in some fashion, the needs and hierarchies of the earthly realm. The body was often placed in a crouched or fetal position within the grave, a common practice in many ancient cultures, symbolizing a return to the earth, a rebirth, or a peaceful sleep. Sometimes, particularly for elites, the deceased might be laid out in a more extended position, sometimes on a bier or within a wooden chamber. The method of interment, inhumation body burial, or cremation burning the body and burying the ashes, also varied geographically and temporally within Celtic cultures, often reflecting different spiritual beliefs about the fate of the body and soul. For example, some beliefs held that cremation released the spirit more quickly, while inhumation preserved the body for a future resurrection or a more corporeal afterlife. The construction of the mound itself was an integral part of the ritual. It was a communal effort, drawing upon the labor of many, transforming the landscape into a permanent marker of the individual's significance and the community's shared grief and reverence. The act of piling earth and stone, layer upon layer, created a physical barrier between the living and the dead, but also a spiritual bridge. A dedicated space where the ancestors could reside and perhaps be consulted. You can almost hear the rhythmic thud of shovels, the grunts of exertion, the murmur of prayers or chants accompanying the monumental work. The concept of ancestor veneration was deeply woven into these practices. The mounds became focal points for the community, places where the living could connect with their forebears. Seeking guidance or blessing, annual rituals or seasonal gatherings might have taken place at these sites, reinforcing social bonds and reaffirming the continuity of the lineage. The dead were not truly gone. They were simply in a different state of being. Still part of the collective identity, still influencing the world of the living, historians and archaeologists still actively debate the precise details and regional variations of Celtic funerary rites, often relying on fragmented archaeological evidence and later Roman or Irish monastic texts that may contain biases or reinterpretations. This leaves many specifics open to scholarly discussion, highlighting the challenge of reconstructing ancient belief systems, a less common, yet intriguing. Ritual detail found in some Celtic burials is evidence of animal sacrifice. The bones of horses, dogs, or cattle have been discovered, sometimes ritually placed within the grave chamber or mound. These animals may have been personal companions, symbols of status, or offerings to deities, intended to accompany the deceased on their journey or provide sustenance in the otherworld. It underscores the belief in a continued existence that mirrored aspects of earthly life, complete with companions and provisions. The very orientation of some burial mounds, particularly the passage tombs that predate but were revered by later Celtic peoples, points to another layer of ritual astronomical alignments. Sites like Newgrange in Ireland are famous for their precise alignment with the winter solstice sunrise, where a shaft of light penetrates the long passage to illuminate the central chamber only once a year. While built by Neolithic peoples, the Celts would have inherited and imbued such sites with their own spiritual significance, seeing them as cosmic gateways, connecting the earthly burial to the grand cycles of the sun and stars. It hints at a sophisticated understanding of the cosmos, where the dead were part of a larger, universal rhythm of death and rebirth. You might also find evidence of feasting or communal gatherings associated with the burial mound, fragments of pottery, animal bones, and other refuse around the perimeter suggest that funerary banquets or remembrance feasts took place, where the living shared food and drink, perhaps even leaving offerings for the deceased. These were not just somber events, but communal celebrations of life and mourning, reinforcing the bonds of family and tribe in the face of death. It's a reminder that ancient peoples understood the importance of collective grieving and affirmation. The meticulous nature of these rituals, from the preparation of the body to the careful construction of the mound and the inclusion of specific grave goods, speaks to a deeply ingrained fear of improper burial, a poorly conducted ritual, or a disturbed grave. Could lead to a restless spirit, a common fear across many cultures, as we touched on previously. This emphasizes the vital importance of doing it right to ensure the peaceful repose of the deceased and the safety of the living. So, as you step away from the imagined scene of ancient funerary rites, let the echoes of these profound beliefs settle around you. The Celtic burial mounds were far more than simple graves. They were sacred passages, meticulously crafted spiritual landscapes, and enduring symbols of a people's intricate relationship with death, the otherworld, and the cosmic dance of life and rebirth. You've explored the intricate rituals surrounding Celtic death, a tapestry of solemn preparation and spiritual belief. Now, let's delve into what truly brings these ancient burials to life for modern eyes, the remarkable treasures for the afterlife that were interred with the deceased. These weren't just random trinkets, they were carefully chosen grave goods, each item imbued with meaning, reflecting the deceased's identity, status, and the Celtic vision of the world beyond. Imagine an archaeological dig. Years ago, carefully peeling back layers of earth from a newly discovered burial mound, as the soil is painstakingly removed, revealing the contours of a long collapsed chamber. The first glint of metal catches your eye. Perhaps it's the subtle sheen of bronze, or the unmistakable gleam of gold. This isn't treasure in the sense of pirate loot. It's a window into the past. An intimate collection of objects meant to accompany an individual on their eternal journey. The sheer variety and richness of these grave goods speak volumes about Celtic society and their profound belief in a continuity of existence beyond death, for warriors, which formed a significant part of the Celtic elite. The grave goods were often practical and symbolic extensions of their earthly life. You might find a sword, its iron blade perhaps still retaining the faint marks of its smith, carefully laid beside the deceased, or a spearhead, sharp and ready, positioned for future use. The remains of a shield, perhaps just the bronze boss or fragments of its wooden frame, might also be present, signifying protection and martial prowess. These weren't just weapons, they were symbols of identity, of a warrior's honor, and a presumed continued role in the afterlife. Perhaps in a mythical battle or a continued life of hunting and conquest. The presence of such items suggests a belief in a corporeal, active afterlife, where the skills and necessities of this world would still hold relevance, beyond weaponry. Personal adornments speak volumes about status and identity. The most iconic of these is often the torque, a rigid neck ring, typically made of twisted gold, silver, or bronze. These magnificent pieces of jewelry were not just decorative, they were potent symbols of status, authority, and perhaps even divine connection within Celtic society. Finding a beautifully crafted torque in a grave immediately signals the burial of an elite individual, someone of considerable power and prestige. Imagine the glint of that gold, preserved for thousands of years in the cool earth, now revealed to the light, a silent testament to ancient craftsmanship and power. You might also discover brooches, often intricately decorated with swirling Latin art, used to fasten cloaks, bracelets, armlets, and even elaborate belt buckles. These items weren't just worn, they were part of one's identity, and their inclusion in the grave ensured that the deceased carried their status and beauty into the otherworld. They suggest a concern for appearance and recognition even after death, a desire to be presented well to the ancestors or deities of the next realm. For women, particularly those of high status, the grave goods could be equally rich and revealing. Beyond jewelry, you might find objects related to textile production, such as spindle whorls or loom weights, indicating their roles in domestic life and craftsmanship, or perhaps toiletries, like bronze mirrors, combs, or even small containers that might have held cosmetics or perfumes. These items paint a picture of daily life and gender roles. Even as they accompany the deceased into eternity, it's a subtle reminder that the lives of ancient people, even in their passing, were rich with detail and personal significance. Archaeologists often debate the precise meaning and intention behind specific grave goods. Were they purely symbolic, meant for actual use in the afterlife, or a reflection of earthly status and wealth? This discussion highlights the complexities of interpreting ancient ritual behavior, where multiple layers of meaning could simultaneously apply. Leaving much open to scholarly interpretation, the presence of feasting equipment is another fascinating category. You might unearth bronze or iron cauldrons, drinking vessels sometimes exquisitely crafted from pottery, bronze, or even wood bound with metal, and even fragments of animal bones, suggesting food offerings. This points to a belief in communal feasting in the afterlife. Or perhaps that the deceased would entertain their ancestors or divine beings. It also reinforces the idea of funerary banquets held at the time of burial, where the living shared a final meal with the departed. The vessels then being interred with the deceased, it was a tangible connection between the living and the dead, a shared act of nourishment extending beyond the grave. Tools and equipment also make appearances, while less glamorous than gold. The presence of agricultural tools, craft implements, or even the occasional medical instrument offers glimpses into the deceased's profession or skills. It suggests that even in the afterlife, a person's role or capabilities might continue, or that they were simply being equipped for a journey where all needs, mundane and grand, were provided for. A particularly unique and often rare category of grave good is the Celtic chieftain's chariot in some elite burials. Particularly from the early Iron Age, the dismantled remains of a two-wheeled chariot, complete with its bronze fittings, iron tires, and sometimes even the skeletons of horses, have been discovered. This is an extraordinary find, symbolizing immense wealth, military leadership, and a direct connection to the warrior elite. Imagine the sheer effort of burying such a large, complex object piece by piece within a mound. It speaks to an unshakable belief that this mode of transport, this symbol of power, would be needed in the next world. It's a real wow moment in archaeology. Like finding a luxury car in a modern tomb, these grave goods weren't just randomly tossed into the grave. Their placement was often highly intentional and symbolic. Weapons might be broken or killed to prevent their reuse by the living, or to spiritually release them for the deceased. Vessels might be purposefully inverted. The body itself might be adorned in a specific way, with certain items placed on or around it. Every detail had meaning, every placement a purpose. Guiding the deceased on their final journey, the sheer value and craftsmanship of many of these objects also suggest a form of conspicuous consumption, a final display of wealth and power even in death. It reinforced the status of the deceased's family and clan in the eyes of the living, reminding everyone of their importance. It was a statement that transcended the mortal realm, projecting power into the spiritual and social spheres. One intriguing, subtle detail is the occasional finding of gaming pieces or small, intricately carved dice. This suggests that even leisure activities, or perhaps more ritualistic games, were believed to continue in the afterlife, or that these were meant to entertain the deceased on their journey. It adds a touch of relatable humanity to these ancient burials, reminding us that even in death, people hoped for a continuity of their interests and pleasures. So, as you visualize these remarkable treasures, resting quietly in the earth for millennia before being brought to light, you gain a richer understanding of the Celtic worldview. These grave goods were not just possessions, they were passports to the afterlife, symbols of identity, and profound expressions of a people's deepest hopes and beliefs about what awaited them beyond the veil of this world. You've explored the personal treasures that accompanied the Celts into the afterlife, hinting at their identity and beliefs. Now, let's ascend to the very pinnacle of Celtic society, venturing into the monumental resting places of their most powerful figures. We're going to examine the warrior kings and queens, whose elite burials in these mounds reveal a profound understanding of Celtic social hierarchy, immense displays of power, and a fascinating glimpse into the lives of those who ruled. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast archaeological site, perhaps in what is now Germany or France, where a particularly large and prominent burial mound dominates the landscape. This isn't just any mound. This is a princely burial, the final resting place of someone who commanded armies, controlled resources, and held sway over vast territories. The sheer size of these elite mounds often indicates the immense social and political power wielded by the individual interred within. They weren't just leaders, they were figures of immense prestige. Their deaths commemorated with a scale that rivals even some Roman emperors' tombs. These elite burials often feature elaborate and robust burial chambers, sometimes constructed from massive timber frameworks or carefully laid stone, creating a sturdy inner vault designed to protect the deceased and their valuable grave goods for eternity. You might find evidence of a grand wooden coffin, intricately carved, or perhaps a funerary cart or even a dismantled chariot, symbolizing their status as a warrior or a leader who traveled far. The meticulous construction of these chambers speaks to the immense resources mobilized for these funerals. Reflecting the power of the living family and tribe as much as the deceased, within these chambers, the deceased would be laid to rest, often adorned with their finest attire and most prized possessions. For a warrior king, this might include a beautifully crafted iron sword and an ornate bronze scabbard, perhaps inlaid with precious materials, a testament to his martial prowess. A helmet, intricately decorated, might rest near his head, offering symbolic protection even in death. You could find spears, shields, and sometimes even a full set of chainmail, an incredibly rare and valuable item in the Iron Age. Signifying supreme military authority, the presence of such extensive weaponry indicates a strong warrior ethos at the apex of Celtic society. For elite women, often referred to by archaeologists as princesses or queens, due to the richness of their burials. The grave goods were equally, if not more, opulent. Think of spectacular gold torques, so heavy they might have been difficult to wear in life, now encircling a skeletal neck, shimmering softly in the light of discovery. Intricate bronze fibulae brooches adorned their garments, sometimes encrusted with amber or coral, reflecting sophisticated craftsmanship and extensive trade networks. You might discover beautifully cast bronze armlets and bracelets, delicate gold earrings, or even ornate hair ornaments. These weren't just personal adornments. They were powerful statements of wealth, status, and perhaps even priestly or political influence. Archaeologists still actively debate the precise political and religious roles of elite women in Celtic society, often inferring their power from the exceptional richness and particular types of grave goods found in their burials. This ongoing discussion highlights the complexity of reconstructing ancient gender roles from material culture alone. One of the most remarkable discoveries in these elite burials is the consistent presence of drinking paraphernalia. Often imported, imagine elaborate bronze cauldrons, sometimes massive enough to hold hundreds of liters, suggesting grand feasts and communal drinking rituals. Alongside these, you might find sets of exquisitely crafted bronze vessels for mixing and serving drinks, and perhaps dozens of smaller drinking horns or cups, sometimes made from pottery, bronze, or even precious metals. The sheer quantity and quality of these items point to a culture where communal drinking, perhaps of beer or imported wine, was a central social and ritual activity, reserved for the elite. The presence of imported Greek or Etruscan bronze vessels in Celtic princely graves demonstrates extensive long-distance trade networks, linking these barbarian elites to the sophisticated Mediterranean world. It's like finding a modern chieftain buried with a set of designer champagne flutes and a vintage Rolls-Royce. It screams wealth and global connection. The context of these drinking sets also suggests that these rulers were not just warriors but also hosts, leaders who presided over lavish gatherings, cementing alliances and displaying their generosity. The act of sharing a drink was a powerful social bond, and the ability to provide such sumptuous feasts was a hallmark of elite status, beyond personal items. These burials often reveal evidence of chariots, particularly in early Iron Age princely burials. The dismantled parts of a two-wheeled chariot, along with its fittings and sometimes even the skeletons of the horses that pulled it, represent the ultimate symbol of wealth, military power, and mobility for a Celtic chieftain. Imagine the immense effort involved in burying such a large and complex machine, piece by piece, within the confines of a meticulously constructed burial chamber. It tells us that this prized possession, this symbol of earthly power, was deemed essential for the journey into the next world. perhaps for continued travels or for leading spectral armies. It's a truly spectacular find, offering unparalleled insight into Iron Age Celtic elite culture. The presence of sacrificed animals, beyond horses for chariots, is also not uncommon in these elite burials. The remains of cattle, pigs, or dogs might be found, often ritually placed. These could be provisions for the afterlife, symbols of their earthly wealth, or offerings to the gods, signifying the chieftain's continued role as a mediator between the human and divine realms. These elite burials were not just about the individual. They were statements about the power and prestige of the entire clan or tribe they represented. The monumental effort, the lavish grave goods, the prominent location of the mound, all serve to reinforce the social hierarchy and the legitimacy of the ruling lineage for generations to come. They were visible reminders to both allies and rivals of the enduring power of the deceased's family. You would have looked at such a mound and known instantly that it belonged to someone of immense consequence. Someone whose legacy was intended to last forever. One fascinating and somewhat unique aspect of some elite burials is the occasional inclusion of musical instruments or fragments thereof, such as lyres or trumpets. This hints at the importance of music in elite Celtic culture, perhaps for entertainment, ceremonial purposes, or even as part of ritualistic performances. It adds a touch of sensory richness to our understanding of their daily lives, suggesting that even in death, the sounds of their world might have been important. These warrior kings and queens, and the immense mounds that cover them, provide us with some of the most compelling insights into Celtic society. They reveal a world of hierarchical structures, powerful leaders, sophisticated craftsmanship, extensive trade networks, and a profound, enduring belief in an afterlife that mirrored, in its opulence and necessities, the world they left behind. You've explored the lavish displays of power and wealth in the burials of Celtic warrior kings and queens. Now, let's venture into a far darker, more controversial aspect that some of these ancient mounds seem to conceal: the chilling, whispered evidence of human sacrifices. Dark whisper. This is a topic often debated among archaeologists and historians. But the archaeological record, though fragmented, sometimes presents unsettling clues pointing to ritual killings associated with these monumental burials. Imagine the solemnity of a grand funeral for a powerful chieftain, the construction of the mound, the preparation of the body, the careful placement of grave goods, all meticulously performed. But what if, in addition to the valuable artifacts and the deceased leader, other individuals were also interred, not as mourned relatives, but as deliberate offerings, their lives extinguished to accompany or honor the main burial? This is the disturbing possibility suggested by certain archaeological finds, evidence for human sacrifice in Iron Age Europe, while not universal across all Celtic groups or time periods, does exist in various forms. Sometimes it's the discovery of multiple bodies within a single mound, where one individual is clearly the primary burial, surrounded by others whose placement or condition suggests a less dignified, perhaps ritualistic, end. You might find a body positioned in an awkward or constrained manner, or evidence of violence that doesn't align with standard burial practices. These subtle clues can hint at something beyond natural death or respectful interment. One of the most compelling, though still debated, forms of evidence comes from the famous princely graves of the Hallstatt and Latine cultures, particularly in Central Europe, in some of these elaborate burials. Archaeologists have found the remains of additional individuals, often placed at the entrance to the burial chamber, within pits near the main interment, or even beneath the wheels of a chariot. Their age, sex, and the circumstances of their death can sometimes point towards a sacrificial role. For instance, the remains of young individuals or those showing signs of trauma inconsistent with natural death are particularly suggestive. Consider the unsettling scenario: a powerful chieftain dies, to ensure their smooth passage into the otherworld, or to provide them with eternal companions or servants. Perhaps other human lives were deemed necessary sacrifices. These individuals might have been captives, slaves, retainers, or even family members. The act would have been a profoundly ritualistic one, steeped in ancient beliefs about appeasing deities, strengthening the deceased's power in the afterlife, or cementing the social order through a terrifying display of authority. Archaeological interpretations of human remains are highly complex, and differentiating between ritual sacrifice, accidental death, or even secondary burials of individuals who died naturally around the same time can be incredibly challenging. This leads to ongoing academic debate. Where clear? Definitive proof of sacrifice is often elusive, relying on a synthesis of circumstantial evidence, a particularly grim, yet fascinating. Detail comes from the discovery of bog bodies. Though these are not directly tied to burial mounds, these well-preserved remains from peat bogs across northern Europe, like the famous Tollandman, often show signs of violent death, garroting, throat slitting, or blunt force trauma, and are sometimes associated with ritualistic depositions. While not in mounds, these bog bodies offer a powerful, if separate, line of evidence for ritual killing in Iron Age Celtic-speaking societies, hinting at a broader cultural acceptance of human offerings. The possibility that similar practices, though perhaps less well preserved, occurred within the burial mounds is a chilling thought. The motive for such sacrifices, if they occurred, would have been deeply rooted in the Celtic worldview. It could have been to provide a retinue for the deceased chieftain in the afterlife, ensuring their continued status and comfort. Or perhaps it was an offering to powerful underworld deities, to guarantee the deceased's safe passage, or to bring prosperity to the living community. In some cases, it might have been a macabre display of power by the surviving elite, demonstrating their absolute authority over life and death within their domain. The sacrifice of human lives would have been the ultimate show of devotion and control. You might also find a peculiar arrangement of bodies in some multiple burials that suggests a ritualistic element rather than simply sequential interments. Bodies placed in highly unnatural positions, or those lacking typical funerary treatment, can raise questions. For example, some burials contain dismembered or partially articulated remains, which could imply a ritualistic dismemberment or a symbolic breaking of the body before burial. These are the details that send shivers down an archaeologist's spine, hinting at something beyond the ordinary. The presence of specific artifacts can also provide clues. If sacrificial tools or implements are found near human remains in a context that isn't clearly battle-related, it adds to the suspicion, however. Definitive proof is always elusive, as context is everything, and ancient rituals were often complex and open to multiple interpretations. The controversial nature of this topic stems from the fact that human sacrifice is a deeply unsettling concept for modern sensibilities. As such, archaeologists are incredibly cautious in their interpretations, seeking overwhelming evidence before making such a claim. They rely on forensic analysis of skeletal remains, understanding taphonomy, how bodies decay and are preserved, and careful contextual analysis of the burial site. It's a painstaking process to differentiate between ritual violence and other forms of death, one subtle, often overlooked aspect of this discussion is the distinction between voluntary sacrifice and forced execution, while difficult to ascertain from skeletal remains alone. Some ancient texts, though often biased Roman accounts, hint at practices where retainers or even wives might have voluntarily accompanied their lord into the afterlife. This adds another layer of complexity to interpreting these grim discoveries. So, as you consider the monumental effort and profound beliefs behind Celtic burial mounds, allow yourself a moment to ponder the darker whispers that sometimes emanate from their depths. The possibility of human sacrifice, though unsettling, is a stark reminder of the extreme lengths to which ancient peoples sometimes went to honor their dead, appease their gods, and solidify their earthly power, forever sealing these grim secrets within the silent earth. You've explored the unsettling possibility of human sacrifice within the grand scope of Celtic burial mounds. Now, let's turn our gaze upwards, beyond the earthly constructions, and look to the sky. We're going to delve into a fascinating aspect of these ancient monuments, their role as celestial alignments and purpose. Understanding how these massive earthen structures often connected the dead not just to the earth, but to the cosmos and the eternal rhythms of the sun, moon, and seasons. Imagine standing on a cold, pre-dawn winter morning, perhaps 5,000 years ago, not in the Iron Age of the Celts, but in the Neolithic period, where the earliest and most elaborate of these passage tombs were built. You're at the entrance of a monumental structure like Newgrange in Ireland, a site so profoundly significant that the later Celts would revere it and incorporate it into their own mythology. As the sun begins to creep above the distant horizon, a single brilliant shaft of light penetrates the long, dark passage, slowly illuminating the central chamber within the mound. This happens only once a year for a few precious minutes, around the winter solstice. This isn't a coincidence, it's a deliberate, astronomical alignment, a testament to an incredible understanding of the cosmos. While the Celts themselves didn't build these specific Neolithic passage tombs, they inhabited the landscapes where they stood, imbued them with their own lore, and likely continued a tradition of connecting their burial practices to celestial cycles. The very idea of aligning a burial site with the sun or moon suggests a belief in a deep, cyclical relationship between life, death, and the cosmos. Death was not seen as a final end, but as a transition, perhaps a return to a cosmic womb. And the sun's rebirth at the winter solstice became a powerful metaphor for renewal and the hope of an afterlife. You can almost feel the awe of the people witnessing such an event. It would have been a profoundly spiritual experience. Connecting their deceased ancestors directly to the most powerful celestial body, it wasn't just a show of engineering prowess, it was a cosmic ritual, a moment when the earthly realm of the dead touched the eternal. Predictable dance of the heavens, it instilled a sense of profound order in the universe. Even in the face of death, beyond Newgrange, many other burial mounds, both Neolithic and later Celtic, show evidence of alignment with significant solar or lunar events. Some might align with the summer solstice sunrise, others with the equinoxes, or even specific phases of the moon. These alignments weren't accidental. They required sophisticated observation of the heavens over many years, a deep understanding of astronomical cycles, and the engineering skill to translate that knowledge into massive, enduring architectural forms. This points to a society with specialized knowledge, perhaps held by a priestly class or astronomer shamans who understood these celestial rhythms intimately. The purpose of these alignments was likely multifaceted. Primarily, they connected the deceased to the cycles of rebirth and regeneration, just as the sun dies in winter and is reborn at the solstice. Bringing new life to the land, so too was the deceased hope to undergo a form of renewal in the otherworld. The light penetrating the dark tomb symbolized hope, a promise of light after darkness, of life after death. It was a tangible link between the microcosm of the individual's life and the macrocosm of the universe. Secondly, these alignments transformed the mounds into calendrical devices. They marked the turning points of the year, signaling crucial times for planting, harvesting, and communal gatherings. Thus, the burial mound became not just a cemetery, but a vital part of the living community's agricultural and ritual calendar. The ancestors, through their resting place, continue to guide the living, anchoring them to the rhythms of the natural world. Archaeological methodology for confirming astronomical alignments in ancient structures can be complex, often involving statistical analysis and precise surveying to rule out accidental occurrences, leading to ongoing scholarly discussions about the definitive purpose of some alignments. The debate often centers on whether specific alignments were intentional ceremonial acts or simply practical considerations for construction. Fascinating. Little known detail is that some mounds may have been aligned not just with the sun, but also with prominent stars or constellations, while harder to definitively prove due to the shifting positions of stars over millennia. Some theories suggest that certain passages or internal features might point towards specific celestial bodies, important in ancient cosmologies. This would add an even deeper layer of astronomical sophistication to their construction and a more intricate connection to their perceived divine patrons. The very shape of many mounds, particularly the circular ones, can be seen as mirroring celestial forms: the sun, the moon, or the overarching dome of the sky. The burial chamber at the center of the mound becomes a kind of cosmic womb or inner sanctum, where the deceased is cradled within the earth, connected to the heavens above. It's a powerful visual metaphor, fusing earthly burial with cosmic destiny. This profound connection to the cosmos also suggests that the Celtic understanding of the afterlife was deeply intertwined with natural cycles. Their gods and spirits were often associated with natural phenomena, and death was seen as part of a larger, ongoing process of transformation and regeneration. The mounds, through their alignments, facilitated this worldview, making it tangible and real. Think about the contrast, the seemingly timeless, static presence of the mound, yet within it, the dynamic, annual dance of light and shadow, dictated by the celestial bodies. It's a powerful juxtaposition, highlighting the Celtic understanding of eternity not as a static endpoint, but as a continuous cycle of change and return. The planning and execution required for such precise alignments speak volumes about the intellectual capabilities of these ancient peoples. They were not just primitive farmers, they were keen observers of the heavens, skilled engineers, and profound spiritual thinkers. The mounds, with their hidden astronomical secrets, are silent witnesses to this lost wisdom, inviting us to look beyond their earthy exteriors and ponder the cosmic ambitions of their builders. So, as you step away from the imagined light show of a solstice sunrise within an ancient mound, let the echoes of these celestial connections settle around you. The Celtic burial mounds were not merely tombs, they were cosmic gateways, calendrical markers, and enduring monuments to a people deeply attuned to the rhythms of the universe, binding their dead not just to the earth, but to the timeless dance of the stars. You've explored the cosmic ambitions woven into the very structure of Celtic burial mounds, connecting them to celestial rhythms. Now, let's peel back the layers of earth and time to truly appreciate the sheer scale of the undertaking. We're going to delve into the immense labor and engineering behind these massive constructions, revealing the ingenuity and social organization required to raise these monumental tributes to the dead. Imagine yourself thousands of years ago, part of an ancient community. A chieftain has died, or a new lineage needs a permanent marker, or perhaps it's time to honor a significant ancestor. The decision is made: a new burial mound will be built. This isn't a task for a few individuals over a weekend. This is a project that would have consumed the collective energy of an entire community, potentially for months, even years. The sheer volume of material to be moved, shaped, and carefully placed is truly staggering, especially considering the rudimentary tools available. The primary building materials were, naturally, earth and stone. Picture hundreds, perhaps thousands, of individuals, men, women, and even children, engaged in this monumental task. Their tools. Simple, you'd have antler picks for breaking up compacted soil, wooden shovels or spades for scooping, and sturdy wicker baskets or leather bags for carrying the excavated earth and stones. Forget about wheelbarrows or carts at this early stage. Much of the material was moved by sheer human strength, carried on backs or dragged on simple sledges. The first step was often to clear the chosen site, perhaps a natural hillock or a prominent ridge, and then to outline the precise footprint of the mound. This might involve laying out a circular ditch or a stone curb. Defining the sacred boundary. Then came the arduous task of excavating the surrounding area to gather material for the mound's core. This process, known as borrowing, created the distinctive ditches often seen around the base of many burial mounds, serving both as a quarry for material and a symbolic boundary. As the earth was excavated, it was transported to the designated mound site. Imagine long lines of people patiently carrying basket after basket of soil, depositing it layer by layer. This wasn't haphazard dumping. The construction of a stable mound required careful layering and compaction of the earth to prevent erosion and collapse. You might find distinct layers of different types of soil, turf, or even charcoal and clay, carefully arranged. This wasn't just practical engineering, it could also have had symbolic meaning, perhaps representing different cosmic levels or stages of the construction ritual, for passage tombs and chambered cairns. The stonework was even more demanding. These structures required sourcing massive stone slabs, megaliths, from distant quarries. Imagine the logistical nightmare cutting these multi-ton stones from the earth, perhaps splitting them using wedges and natural fault lines. Then, the even greater challenge of transporting them. This would have involved hundreds of people, using wooden rollers, ropes made from animal hides or twisted fibers, and immense leverage, slowly inching these colossal stones across the landscape, sometimes for miles. It's a testament to incredible communal effort and ingenious, albeit labor-intensive, methods of transportation. Once on site, these massive stones had to be carefully erected and fitted together to form the burial chamber and passage. This required a precise understanding of physics and leverage, using ramps, levers, and counterweights to maneuver the stones into place. The interlocking of massive lintels and uprights, without mortar, to create stable, enduring structures, speaks volumes about the engineering acumen of these ancient peoples. You wouldn't survive trying to lift even a corner of one of those stones. It would crush you. Archaeological studies often highlight the sophisticated understanding of soil mechanics and monumental stonework demonstrated by prehistoric builders, challenging earlier notions of them being primitive in their engineering capabilities. The precision of some constructions suggests a deliberate, well-planned approach, not just brute force. The internal architecture of some mounds also points to deliberate ventilation systems or drainage, while not as elaborate as Roman aqueducts. The builders understood the need to prevent waterlogging within the chambers to protect the remains and grave goods. They often incorporated layers of permeable material or slight gradients to channel water away. A subtle but crucial piece of engineering. Think about the sheer amount of time involved. Building a truly massive mound, like some of the larger examples in Ireland or Britain, could have taken generations to complete. This wasn't a single project commissioned by one ruler, it was an ongoing communal effort, passed down through families. A continuous act of devotion to the ancestors and the community's identity. This long-term commitment speaks to the profound cultural significance of these structures. The organization of labor for such projects also reveals insights into Celtic society. It implies a strong leadership structure capable of marshalling and directing large workforces, whether it was a chieftain, a priestly class, or a communal consensus. Someone had to plan, organize, and motivate hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals to perform such arduous tasks. It's a glimpse into the complex social dynamics of these Iron Age communities, a subtle yet revealing. Detail comes from the archaeological examination of the tools themselves, worn antler picks, broken wooden shovels, and fragments of baskets sometimes found near these sites offer direct evidence of the repetitive, grinding labor involved. The wear patterns on these tools can even tell us about the specific techniques used and the immense force applied by the ancient builders. It's a tangible connection to the hands that shaped these landscapes. The construction of these mounds was often accompanied by rituals and ceremonies. Each stage, from the initial groundbreaking to the final capping of the mound, might have involved specific prayers, offerings, or communal feasts. This imbued the construction process itself with sacred meaning, reinforcing the spiritual significance of the final monument. The labor wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, a collective act of devotion. So, as you visualize the immense toil, the raw human power, and the surprising ingenuity that went into shaping these ancient landscapes, you gain a new appreciation for the Celtic burial mounds. They are not just silent hills, they are monuments to an extraordinary collective effort, a testament to ancient engineering, and a profound declaration of faith, built with the sweat and will of countless hands, enduring for millennia. You've explored the monumental labor and engineering prowess behind Celtic burial mounds. Now, let's consider what these silent structures and the artifacts within them whisper to us about something even more ephemeral, the echoes of lost languages and how they offer tantalizing clues to Celtic identity, their worldview, and the intricate tapestry of their beliefs. Imagine an archaeologist carefully unearthing a bronze artifact from deep within a burial mound. It might be a weapon, a piece of jewelry, or a ceremonial vessel. As they clean away centuries of accumulated dirt, they notice faint, incised lines, not just decoration, but strange, unfamiliar symbols. These aren't pictures, they are inscriptions, fragments of a written language, a direct voice from the past, often in a form of ancient Celtic. This is where the world of physical remains intersects with the intangible realm of language, offering a rare glimpse into the minds of the people who created these mounds. The study of ancient Celtic languages is incredibly complex. Unlike the Romans or Greeks, the Iron Age Celts, spread across a vast geographical area, didn't develop a single widespread writing system for monumental inscriptions or extensive historical records. At least not in the way we commonly understand it. What we do have are fragmented epigraphic evidence, usually on metalwork, stone, or pottery, in various localized scripts. The most famous early examples include inscriptions in Lepontic from northern Italy, Gaulish from France, and Celtiberian from Spain, often written in adapted local alphabets derived from Greek or Etruscan models. These inscriptions are rarely long narratives. They are typically short, concise statements, a dedication, an ownership mark, a personal name, or perhaps a brief funerary formula. You might find a weapon inscribed with the name of its owner, a personal declaration of prowess, or a funerary stone with the name of the deceased and their lineage. While brief, each inscription is a precious fragment, a direct linguistic link to the people who once lived and died, and whose beliefs shaped these mounds. They tell us how individuals identified themselves, how they structured their social world, and how they conceived of their relationship to the divine. Consider the immense satisfaction for a linguist or epigrapher deciphering such a fragment. It's like hearing a faint, ancient whisper across thousands of years. A direct communication from a mind that thought and spoke in ways we are only just beginning to reconstruct. Every newly deciphered word adds another piece to the vast, incomplete puzzle of Celtic language and thought. These linguistic fragments are crucial because they provide context to the material culture found in the mounds. A beautifully crafted torque is a powerful symbol of status, but if it also bears an inscription, it can tell us the name of the person who owned it, or even a dedication to a specific deity. Deepening our understanding beyond mere material wealth, they transform objects from silent artifacts into voices. The precise phonetic reconstruction of ancient Celtic languages is a challenging and ongoing area of academic debate, relying heavily on comparative linguistics with modern Celtic languages and indirect evidence from Roman and Greek authors. This means that while we can decipher words, the exact pronunciation and nuances of ancient Celtic are often open to scholarly interpretation. a particularly intriguing yet elusive aspect of this linguistic puzzle is the role of the Druids. Roman authors, like Caesar, mention the Druids as a powerful priestly class among the Celts, who possessed vast knowledge, including oral traditions, laws, and religious teachings. Crucially, Caesar states that they refused to commit their sacred knowledge to writing, preferring oral transmission for mnemonic and perhaps secretive purposes. This means that much of the rich spiritual and intellectual life of the Celts, particularly that controlled by the Druids, may be forever lost to us, leaving huge gaps in our understanding. The archaeological record of the Mounds offers tantalizing hints, but the specific prayers, hymns, and philosophical tenets remain unwritten, silent echoes in the wind. This absence of extensive written records makes every tiny inscription found within a burial mound all the more valuable. It's like finding a single, precious page from a lost library. These scattered linguistic crumbs are what allow linguists to reconstruct Proto-Celtic forms, to understand the relationships between different Celtic dialects, and to piece together vocabulary related to social structure, religion, and daily life. They help us fill in the conceptual world of the mound builders. You might find evidence of personal names that reveal common naming conventions, showing patrilineal descent or connections to heroic figures, or perhaps religious epithets that shed light on specific deities or cult practices that are otherwise unknown. Even simple dedications can reveal patron-client relationships or communal offerings. Each is a tiny window into a complex worldview. One peculiar detail is the occasional use of Ogham script in later Celtic contexts, particularly in Ireland and parts of Britain. This is a unique, linear script carved mostly on standing stones, often used for memorial purposes, while primarily seen on above-ground monuments. The existence of such a distinct script shows the evolving nature of literacy and monumentality within Celtic-speaking areas. Even if it rarely appears directly within the deep confines of the ancient burial mounds themselves, it highlights the ingenuity of different Celtic groups in adapting writing to their own contexts. So, when you consider what ancient Celtic burial mounds concealed, remember it's not just gold and bones, it's also the tantalizing, fragmented whispers of a lost tongue, etched into metal or stone. These tiny linguistic echoes offer us a direct, if incomplete, connection to the minds of the people who built these monumental tributes, providing invaluable clues to their identity, their spiritual beliefs, and the rich, complex world that lies silently beneath the green mounds. You've explored the whispers of lost languages echoing from Celtic burial mounds. Now, let's consider the long and often turbulent history of these ancient monuments after their original purpose faded. We're talking about a narrative of plunder, preservation, and prospect. A story that encompasses both the destructive greed of treasure hunters and the meticulous efforts of modern archaeologists to protect and understand these invaluable historical sites. Imagine a time centuries after the Celts built these mounds, perhaps in the medieval period, or even the early modern era. The original meaning of these green hills had largely faded, replaced by local folklore, tales of buried treasure, or simply a sense of ancient mystery. To many, these mounds weren't revered tombs, but simply large bumps in the landscape that might conceal riches. This led to a long and unfortunate history of plunder. Early treasure hunting was often crude and destructive. People would dig directly into the mounds, often without any real understanding of their internal structure or the fragile nature of their contents. You might imagine desperate individuals, perhaps driven by poverty or greed, hacking away with picks and shovels, hoping to strike gold or silver. Their methods would have caused immense damage, collapsing burial chambers, shattering fragile artifacts, and scrambling archaeological layers, forever destroying valuable historical context. This wasn't archaeological excavation, it was sheer vandalism. driven by the lure of easy wealth, the discovery of valuable grave goods in some mounds, even by accident, would only fuel this destructive cycle. The news of a found torque or a cache of ancient weapons would spread, drawing more opportunistic diggers to other known mounds in the region. This continued for centuries, meaning that many of the most accessible or well-known burial mounds were repeatedly disturbed. Their original contents scattered or melted down, leaving behind only tantalizing fragments for later. More scientific investigations. Historians widely acknowledge that a significant percentage of archaeological sites, including burial mounds, were extensively looted throughout history, meaning that our understanding of their original contents is often based on incomplete or damaged evidence. This loss of historical data is a constant challenge for archaeologists. Then came the gradual shift towards antiquarianism in the 17th and 18th centuries, while still not fully scientific. These early gentleman scholars had a greater interest in the objects themselves and their historical context. Rather than just their material value, they would document their finds, make sketches, and sometimes even attempt rudimentary maps, while their methods still often caused damage by modern standards. It was a step away from pure plunder towards a nascent form of preservation. You might imagine a bewigged antiquarian, sketchbook in hand, carefully examining a bronze artifact before removing it. A stark contrast to the rough and tumble treasure seeker. The true era of archaeological preservation began in the 19th and 20th centuries. As the discipline of archaeology matured into a rigorous science, this involved systematic excavation, meticulous documentation of every layer of soil, every artifact's position, and every structural detail. The goal was no longer just to find treasure, but to understand the people who built these mounds, their lives, their beliefs, and their relationship with death. Modern archaeological techniques are incredibly sophisticated. You might witness a team using ground-penetrating radar GPR to map the internal structure of a mound without even breaking ground, revealing hidden chambers or passages before excavation begins. Then, during the actual dig, the work is painstakingly slow, instead of shovels. Archaeologists often use small hand tools, brushes, and even dental picks to carefully remove centuries of earth. Layer by layer, every bone fragment, every bead, every fleck of ancient pottery is meticulously recorded, photographed and mapped in 3 dimensions. This painstaking process of preservation is a battle against both time and human impact. The elements, rain, wind, erosion, constantly threaten these exposed ancient structures. But perhaps the greatest threat, even today, is unintended damage from modern land use. Development, or even accidental discovery by construction crews. This means constant monitoring, legal protections, and public awareness campaigns are crucial for their survival. One interesting, often frustrating, detail for archaeologists is dealing with unrecorded disturbance. You might find evidence of past looting, a broken pottery shard from a valuable vessel, a scattered collection of beads, or a collapsed chamber, but with no historical record of who did it or when. This leaves archaeologists to piece together what happened based on the fragmented clues. A detective story spanning centuries. It's like finding a crime scene that's been picked over multiple times before you arrived. The prospect for the future of Celtic burial mounds is a complex one. On one hand, new technologies continue to provide unprecedented insights without destructive excavation. Techniques like LiDAR light detection and ranging can reveal subtle earthworks and hidden mounds from aerial surveys, exposing previously unknown sites. Advanced DNA analysis of human remains can tell us about ancient migrations, family relationships, and even diets, shedding light on the individuals buried within. On the other hand, climate change, intensified agriculture, and the ever-present threat of illegal metal detecting and opportunistic looting remain significant challenges. Balancing public access and tourism with the need to protect these fragile sites is also an ongoing dilemma. Similar to what we discussed with the Roman catacombs, So, as you ponder the long journey of these ancient mounds, from their grand creation to their periods of plunder, and finally to the era of scientific preservation, you realize their story is far from over. Each newly discovered artifact, each painstakingly excavated layer, offers another piece of the puzzle, a fresh whisper from the earth, inviting us to delve deeper into the hidden world that these magnificent structures still conceal. The prospect is always there, the chance that the next gentle sweep of a brush will uncover something new. Something that reshapes our understanding. Something that adds another voice to the timeless tales held within the ancient Celtic earth. You've traversed the complex history of Celtic burial mounds. From their grand construction and cosmic alignments to their unfortunate history of plunder and inspiring modern preservation. Now, as our journey through these ancient earthworks gently comes to a close, let's settle into a final reflection on timeless earth, timeless tales, these enduring monuments, these silent hills. Continue to whisper profound stories about humanity's past and our universal, unchanging relationship with death, memory, and the land itself. Imagine, one last time, standing at the base of one of these majestic mounds. The wind rustles through the grass on its slopes, a sound that has echoed across this very spot for thousands of years. The clouds drift overhead, casting moving shadows, just as they did for the Celtic peoples who labored to build it. The sun warms your face, a warmth that has shone on countless generations who revered this sacred place. The earth beneath your feet feels ancient, solid, a tangible connection to a deep, resonant past. The true legacy of the Celtic burial mounds lies not just in the treasures they concealed, or the engineering marvels they represent, but in the profound human impulses they embody. They speak to our fundamental need to acknowledge death, to ritualize passage, and to honor those who have gone before us. This is a need that transcends cultures, time periods, and specific beliefs. Whether you believe in an otherworld or simply the quiet dignity of rest, the act of creating a lasting monument for the dead resonates deeply within us. These mounds remind us that for ancient peoples, the land was not just ground to be worked or conquered, it was alive, imbued with spiritual significance, a sacred canvas upon which they painted their understanding of life and death. The mound itself became a mediator, a physical link between the visible world and the unseen realm of the ancestors. It allowed the living to connect with the dead, to seek their guidance, to draw strength from their enduring presence. This deep connection to the earth, this understanding of it as both tomb and womb, is a powerful, timeless tale. Think about the sheer persistence of these structures. Despite millennia of weather, erosion, agricultural activity, and even plunder, they remain. They are silent witnesses to countless historical events, to the rise and fall of empires, to the endless cycles of human life and change. They have outlasted the languages spoken by their builders, the names of many of the powerful rulers they contained, and even the direct memory of the specific rituals performed at their feet. Yet their presence endures, a constant, tangible whisper from a distant past. The stories they tell are not always explicit. They are often inferred from scattered bones, broken pottery, faded gold, but these fragments speak volumes about social hierarchies, trade networks, artistic skill, and deep spiritual beliefs. They remind us that even without written histories, ancient peoples communicated their worldviews through their actions, through the objects they created, and through the monumental landscapes they shaped. Each discovery is like piecing together a forgotten epic, revealed one silent artifact at a time. The appeal of these mounds today, beyond their archaeological significance, lies in their ability to evoke a sense of mystery and wonder. They connect us to a primal human curiosity about what lies beneath the surface, both literally and metaphorically. What secrets do they still hold? What other stories are waiting to be revealed by the gentle sweep of an archaeologist's brush, or the silent hum of a ground-penetrating radar? This ongoing sense of prospect ensures their continued relevance. Archaeologists and cultural heritage experts often emphasize that the preservation of these mounds is not just about physical structures, but about protecting intangible cultural heritage, the ancient beliefs, rituals, and stories that defined a people's relationship with death and the landscape. This highlights the holistic nature of modern preservation efforts. The ancient Celts, through these mounds, left us a legacy of enduring questions about our place in the cosmos, the nature of the soul, and the meaning of eternity. They remind us that while the details of our funerary practices may change, the fundamental human need to commemorate, to remember, and to find solace in the face of death remains constant. It's a truth etched into the very earth, a timeless story that continues to resonate. So, as your consciousness gently drifts from the ancient fields and green mounds, let the echoes of these timeless tales slowly fade. Feel the lingering coolness in the air, the distant memory of ancient stones and earth. Allow the images of silent rituals, buried treasures, and the enduring presence of these colossal monuments to become soft, ethereal wisps. The stories of those who sleep beneath the timeless earth have been told. Let your mind become as still and deep as the heart of a Celtic mound. As you drift into a profoundly peaceful sleep,